All right, guys. So I'm in my girlfriend's Hyundai Genesis, and she's been complaining that it's been stalling on her. Right? It just happened on me while I was, pulling it into the garage, and then started right back up again. And as I say, pictures or it didn't happen. So I'm trying to see if I can do it again, get it to stall. Right? It started back up again. It's right when I come to a stop, it just stalls out. So that's what's happening. So see if I can get it to do it again. So I'm just driving around. Happened once. So I'm just going around the block. Probably not. Just come to a stop. Nope. Didn't do it that time. Nope. Alright, guess it pictures or it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Anyways, I'll pull it back into the garage. But yeah, when it did happen, it cranked for a really long time before it started. And then there was no RPM on attack, but the engine was running. So it's clear indication of a bad crank sensor. Yeah, so you all know I work at Hyundai, and I get a lot of these customers that complain about, hey, it stalls. Their car stalls when it comes to a stop. Or I had one weird one where they're just driving, and then the tach just shows 0 RPM. So we usually keep a lot of these crank sensors in stock for like the Elantras, Hyundai Accents, whatever, the Velosters, because they all use pretty much similar engines, same crank sensors. But not much on the Hyundai Genesis, because we don't get that many Hyundai Genesis customers come in, because I guess they're not that many out there. Yeah, usually when that happens, you don't get any, check engine light or any codes, but we're going to scan it and take a look and see if what kind of codes we have anyways. I'm pretty sure there was no codes. So yeah, pulled into the garage earlier, and then it stalled. And then when I cranked it back, tried to crank it all over again to get it started, it cranked for a really long time. And then it did fire up, but then there was no RPM on the tach. And then that ESC light was on solid. But yeah, I'll go grab the scanner and then see what kind of codes are in it. And yeah, I'm pretty sure there's no codes for any kind of crank sensor or any under the engine module. So yeah, let me go grab the scanner. All right. So yeah, I am scanning it for codes, and yeah. So when my girlfriend texted me saying her car stalled, it gave me kind of PTSD, because I had one customer where this was back in like 2014, and oh yeah, my girlfriend's right here. Can you tell the viewers how you were freaking out about your car stalling on the road at a light, and you thought people were honking at you? You want to be in the video? No. No, you don't want to? Okay. So yeah, she was freaking out, and because she couldn't get it to start, and then yeah, it fired back up. But yeah, it gave me PTSD, because I had a customer, he was complaining about a stalling issue. This is back in like 2014, and yeah, of course, when you bring a car to a dealership and they try to duplicate the issue, and it's it never happens, right? Oh, maybe I should start the car or key on. Yeah, so I ended up taking it for an overnight test drive, and on the way back to work the next morning, it stalled out on me on Ninth Street Bridge, and yeah, I had to call a tow truck to tow it back to the dealership. So towed it back to the dealership, and I tried to turn the engine over by hand, and it was locked up. And well, you can still turn it if you really turn the crank. But it was tight. It was like there was a lot of resistance trying to turn that crank over, and then yeah, ended up putting an engine into it. So this was back in like 2014 when I was like a first or second year apprentice, and that's when that all started. when I started putting engines in. But yeah, other than that, it's we do get a lot of, well, Hyundais have pretty bad for bad crank sensors, low mileage, stuff like that. I just got to rescan it because it didn't have the car on. But yeah, so they're pretty bad for crank sensors, either in the Elantras, Hyundai Accents, Velosters. The same complaint as always, you come to a stop and the car stalls out on you. And yeah, we keep a lot of the crank sensors in stock because they use pretty much similar crank sensors anyways, because the engines are about the same. Another thing I noticed is there's a lot of sparkly bits on the magnet, stuck to the magnet on the crank sensor. So you're like, oh man. So yeah, but other complaints where I had, like, I think it was another Hyundai Accent where this customer was just like, he would just be cruising along the road on the highway or something, and then the RPM would just drop to 0, but the car's still running, or the engine's still running because you still accelerate and all that kind of stuff. Because when you're cruising at that speed, your car still uses cam sensors for other inputs to keep your engine still running. But it always happens when you come to a stop, the car stalls. But yeah, I picked up a crank sensor. It's Sunday. Dealerships aren't open, or parts department is not open on Sundays at the Hyundai dealership. So I picked up an aftermarket one. And yeah, so yeah, no codes, of course, no engine codes, other than like the, random fault codes for side mirrors or, rain sensors and stuff that usually these Genesis will get. Kind of like Volkswagen, where they have all those random electrical codes. So yeah, that's one of the Hyundai stories I have when I was back in the day. But anyways, so where that crank sensor is, this is not a front wheel drive, this is a rear wheel drive, so the engine sits kind of differently. So that way, usually it's like on the Santa Fe, it's underneath the airbox, or yeah, airbox underneath the battery is like right here. But since this is rear wheel drive, let me show you where it's at. It's like, so you see that coolant pipe, right? It's underneath that. It's since I drove it here, it's pretty hot. So right there in the middle, that's where that crank sensor is. So I'm just gonna wait till it cools down so I can stick my arm down there. And you probably need a long extension with a 10 mil on it, and probably skinny arms. That also will help. So that's where that crank sensor is. I'm just gonna put a new one in after it cools down because it's pretty hot. So yeah, I'll bring you back when the engine's a lot cooler, so I can put my arm down there. All right, so I think it's cooled down enough. It's just kind of warm to the touch. I think the trouble, or the struggle here or the struggle to get this crank sensor out is there's a blue lock tab connector, or there's a blue lock tab that holds that connector there, if you can see it. So you got to pop that lock tab off before it can disconnect that crank sensor, and then it's just a 10 mil. Yeah, I don't know if you can get it from underneath. I don't have a hoist, and there's a skid plate you got to remove underneath to even get up onto the top of that bell housing to get that crank sensor out. So I got the sensor out. All right, it's just right there. You can see that that blue lock tab makes it so much easier to get that lock tab off, and then just disconnect it, plug in a new one. And as you can see, that the OEM one looks different, or the aftermarket one looks different than the OEM one. But the OEM one doesn't have a gasket. And then you can see, where did the OEM one, or aftermarket one go? This one has a O-ring on the end of it. So hopefully it'll work. It's one thing I don't like about aftermarket stuff. They're not the same. All right, so if you're all having trouble trying to get that blue lock tab off, which is like this guy, they will break if all you have to do is stick it in there, and then you break it and you're never able to push that thing out. But if you did break them, it's don't worry. So what I did is I took the wiring harness off, took it off the clips, disconnected a couple of the connectors that are down there. Right, so I can bring it all the way up here, and you get a little pocket screwdriver, and then you lift up on the tab in there, right, and you can pull your sensor out. And then, same thing when you stick it in, I think that tab will go up and then you can push the new sensor on. So there are ways around that blue lock tab if you break it. So yeah, so I connected it. It's all the way, clipped in. And I'm going to stick it back down there. And then I'm going to start the car and see, make sure it, actually starts. And yeah, that's about it. So let me just get that back in there. And with a 10 mil bolt. All right, so I got that crank sensor in, and yeah, you can see it's bolted on. And don't you always hate when customers are always standing behind you and looking over your shoulder all the time, like this person right here? But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start the car. Ow! Don't hit me. And then yeah, make sure it starts. I don't know if I have to crank relearn or anything, but yeah, starts right up. Hopefully it doesn't stall out again, and if it does, I'll let you guys know. And yeah, okay, I'm gonna hook up the scanner and see if there's a crank relearn procedure on the scanner. So I'm gonna hook that up, but yeah, grab the scanner again. All right, let's see if there is a crank relearn procedure. I'm pretty sure there isn't. I remember, I don't know, I've never changed many Genesis crank sensors, but I've done a lot of like Elantras and Fortes and Accents, Velosters, but they were just, I'm pretty sure they were just plug and play. You don't have to do a crank relearn like the Hondas do. And functional test, engine off tests. I think these are just middle lamp. These are just on-off function test with the engine off. ETC motor. Oh, there's ATC motor cleaning if you're ever you're supposed to clean it once in a while. And all it does is just open the flap. So if there was like a recall for that kind of stuff. Sensor heater front. Nope. High pressure pump. Nope. Engine running tests. I'm gonna start the engine. Cam phaser, exhaust, no. That's it. System tests. Nope. CVAT monitor. General functions. That's just calibration. No, that's not it. Yeah, I guess that's it. And yeah, if you have a well, I guess Hyundai, Accent, Elantra, Veloster, I don't know. I guess the majority of the Hyundai and Kias, when they come to a stop and then the engine stalls out, right? Yeah, most likely it's a bad crank sensor, or or it's not a engine that's about to lock up, and something like that. But make sure you pay attention to the tachometer, because if you see 0 RPM and your engine's still running, that's definitely a bad crank sensor, because it uses the crank sensor to read RPM off the crank. So yeah, telltale sign. And also, if you you're cranking it and you're not showing any RPM, because it should just like kind of jump up and down when you're cranking, and if it doesn't show that, that's also a good tell that you got a bad crank sensor. So yeah, that's about it. And hopefully this thing doesn't stall out in there again. Yeah, so if this video helped you, please give me a like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.